Welcome back to the Synergistic CX Podcast. This is part two of our three-part episode where we're focusing on the customer experience in the gas station industry with our special guest, Alexei Cesar, founder and CEO of Four Service Group. In the previous segment, we looked at how gas stations respond to online customer reviews and how the marketing mix is reflected in that feedback. Now we'll look at the customer journey to see how successful this industry is in meeting customer expectations. From the moment a driver searches for a nearby station or approaches the premises, all the way through fueling, making in-store purchases, and paying, each step shapes how the customer experience is perceived. In an environment defined by speed and routine, customers expect the process to be simple, reliable, and efficient. When these everyday moments work smoothly, the visit feels effortless, but when friction appears, dissatisfaction builds very quickly. The gas station customer journey is shaped by fast, routine decisions across multiple connected touchpoints, rather than just a single transaction such as fuel. It begins with a travel or a mobility need and continues through station selection, arriving on the premises, refueling, in-store activity, and payment, and then extends beyond the visit through the follow-up impressions and the intention to return to that particular brand or store. Each step from price visibility and site access to checkout efficiency influences perceptions of trust, speed, and reliability. And the customer journey is denoted here on the slide in that sort of an actual journey with this road. We start at the top and travel through those various pieces of the customer journey all the way through to the bottom, where the customer hopefully becomes a loyal return customer and spreads and advocates for that particular brand. On this slide, we see the customer journey mapped across 5 key stages. You'll see those across the top: awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. At each stage, customers interact with digital tools or the physical environment, the staff, and operational systems. All of these shape satisfaction and repeat behavior. Understanding these connections helps operators reduce friction, improve their consistency, and transform routine stops into lasting loyalty. Each of these 5 stages has on our slide here additional columns representing the steps or the smaller pieces inside of each of those stages. We'll look at each of those in a little bit more detail here coming up, but below that you can also see the individual touch points at each step, such as the fuel station payment panel. You'll see staff members and so forth throughout here, and you can really see the different touch points that customers are interacting with that particular gas station. At the very bottom, you'll see different CX methodologies that can be used to study and focus in on that particular step's customer experience for additional research and examination on how to improve the customer experience in that particular step. So now what we'll do before we go to the next slide is talk about what we're about to see. The next slide is our moment of truth, and this is where we take the various online customer reviews that we've examined and we plot those against this customer journey as a customer journey map. So we're going to see which stages and steps have a great customer experience and which ones don't. So before we step into this here, we always try to take a guess. Does anyone have a guess on which particular stages across the top there? Awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, or advocacy? Does anyone have a guess on what we might see? Are we going to see really great results in some areas and really bad results in others?
I suggest we stop asking about retention because we know that retention is a classic example of where customer experience just tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So if we exclude, I would rephrase the question, if we exclude retention, where else do we expect to see the lowest performance?
I think that this is the kind of industry, this more or less as we saw in the car wash micro industry, that is not something that customers go for pleasure. They need to refuel their car, which means that anything that goes wrong, they don't have a lot of patience. And particularly in the time of payment, they don't have patience at all. So anything that goes wrong with payment is a pain in the process. So I would say that that would be the lowest rate.
Yeah, I agree. Or maybe the greetings from the staff would be one area to look at, because again, it's human is the most important and most problematic in many instances. Yeah.
I support the greetings.
Yeah, for me, it's a waste of my time when I have to stop to refill my car.
Okay, well, drum roll, please. Here we go.
See, payments.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe you have seen it before. That's why you could have guessed. I know, like me.
Also, but
Mhm,
still,
mhm. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, this is an industry that's also competing for one of our worst overall experiences, or at least I should say a great capability for improvement.
Hmm. Yeah.
So before we talk about the customer journey and our moment of truth slide here in more detail, let's talk about what we're looking at on the actual slide. So you can see across the top here are 5 different stages. Again, awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. And at the bottom, you can see the individual steps inside of those stages. So we have, from left to right, we have identification and exploration. That's where the customer is actually identifying their needs and trying to look around and see where they may want to go. Then the research, the services. So they're looking at the different places they could go. And then they arrive on site with the staff greeting. They experience the station ambiance. Then they make their product and service selections and interact with staff. And finally, in the conversion stage, they go through payment and rewards. Then afterwards, they proceed with post-service communication, and then special offers, and then the loyalty and referrals at the very end in the advocacy stage. We have taken the customer reviews, the online customer reviews, and we've taken the various scores of those, and we've mapped the online customer reviews using our APSA-based sentiment analysis, and we've placed averages here on that line in the middle of the graph. So the various circles that you see are the points for each particular step, and that's the average of the mentions of that particular step. You can see most of them here are in the yellow or orange zone. There's actually the payments and rewards is in the red, as is the post-service communication, per what Emil mentioned a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the general average from left to right of the customer's journey. Each of the circles represents, by its size, how often or how frequently that particular step was mentioned in the online customer reviews. The larger circles were mentioned more heavily. The smaller circles were mentioned less frequently.
Okay.
In addition to that, we have a large gray blob behind that line. And what this area represents, the shaded gray area, is the standard deviation from the mean. And what this means is that the bulk of the results for that particular step appear in that band. So anywhere that has a larger gray band means an area where there could be a wide array of responses with respect to that particular step, and might suggest some operational inconsistency. Whereas a tighter gray band would indicate an area where the results were very clustered around the average, meaning that there was a lot of consistency with respect to online reviews and their mentions and ratings of that particular step. So one thing we're seeing here, just right off the bat, is per Alexi's comment earlier, there is, it looks like, quite a bit of potential operational inconsistency in this particular industry. This blob is the gray area is relatively meaty throughout the whole thing, and particularly in the lowest scoring areas there, the payment rewards and the post-service communication, it's very, very broad. So that's, I think, confirming something that Alexi said earlier. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of area for improvement here.
And nothing touched the excellent scale.
Yeah, not a single drop of green on this whole thing.
Absolutely. That's the deviation that is due to inconsistency in operations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one comment I had about the customer journey in any industry actually, and the importance of the last steps actually. Yeah. So what I believe is happening from the, let's say, psychological or even philosophical standpoint is as the customer proceeds along the steps of the customer journey, or phases of customer journey, they subconsciously they do the work of constructing the perception of the experience. So the experience they received is not the experience that's being delivered, but the experience that they are creatively producing in their minds. And by the time the customer journey is over, that work is almost over, and the customer and the last stages just chronologically have the highest impact, unless there has been something outstanding in the earlier stages, like the moment of truth, both negative or positive. The last stages will be very important. It's like the ABC for people who speak professionally. They know the closing of the presentation is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I believe the last step in your graph is not quite a step, it's an outcome. The loyalty and advocacy and the referrals is the outcome of the whole journey. It's the behavior outcome that can be measured. But this is where that experience work is over by now. Experience construction work is over by now. So the customers are through, and that is very subjective. So people live in a world with the only connection to reality is through experience, through our perception. We have no other channel. So the CX channel, customer experience channel, is the only channel to the world the customers have through their minds. And the conclusion from this is that the last stages are critically important. But the first thing to do is always, again, this I'm going to be preaching to the operational consistency comes before everything. Then the moments of truth may play a huge role, but not as much as the meeting your promise, which is operational consistency itself. Just do what you have promised. There should be no gap between promised delivery and actual delivery.
And if you go back to this graphic here, Eric, there is something interesting because normally the Ambience has much higher scores in other industries. And here we have in the fair or almost here it needs attention, and it has a lot of mentions here. As you can see, the circle is quite big. I did a benchmark study a while ago, and one of the main conclusions I had was that in terms of ambience, the cleanliness and environment was perceived much more negatively by female than by males, because cleanliness is not perceived the same way by males and females. And the way that females experience gas stations many times because of the additional services, it's not the same. For example, if you have a baby and you need to change then in the restroom, you have additional needs than if you just go there to fuel your car. And I believe that part of this station ambience is due to this, because most of the brands, they are not adapted well enough to the female demands today.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's actually here in the U.S. There's a couple of chains that are fuel stations, but also have large retail store sections. One's called Buc-ee's, is one here that's in the U.S. that's very popular, and they focus on very heavily on having pristine bathrooms. You go in and there's tile, there's plants. I mean, it's a crazy experience as far as how clean it is typically, and how much they focused on that, to the point where they even have billboards at some of these stores. You might be down on the interstate or the highway 50 miles away, and it'll have a billboard that says there's a Buc-ee's up ahead, our bathrooms are amazing. And that's all the billboard says. And these places are packed. They're very successful. And that's an interesting point, that Ambience is such a, at least in their perspective, seems to be aligned with what you're saying. It's a very big consideration with respect to people deciding to go to a particular field.
And bathroom is just one of the aspects of Ambience, and definitely something that women pay attention to in a very different way than males pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is a just marvelous example of how a company, I don't know this company, by the way, you are referring to, has discovered a powerful driver of customer behavior. I don't know how they did that, because it's not always, it's quite a tricky task to find out what really drives customer decision making and behavior. But they obviously managed that, and probably, I believe, benefiting from that at the moment. Yeah, so they're well done, I would say. Because it's not always obvious what drives customer behavior. I hope to talk about it later today. Yeah, I think that's the example. I will then later research this after our podcast.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Well, I guess just to sum up the moment of truth here, as they say in the military, sometimes this is a target-rich environment. There is a large number of areas where the customer experience can be improved. Alexei, in many industries, we see that the final step of the journey becomes the moment where customers judge whether the experience felt efficient and fair. From your perspective, what does this tell us about the importance of operational discipline in designing routine service experiences?
Well, this tells us the same thing, that companies should deliver what they promise, and they should build stable and reliable operational processes to do that. Especially the last stages, but I would not focus so much on the last stages. I think the last stages have some extra importance indeed. But companies need to look, in each case, what really drives customer behavior. And I believe that it's worth investment. The last stages of the journey is something that companies should pay attention to. But I would recommend every company to do some custom research, because of difference in cultures, of the business formula, of the target audience. They would make slightly different, they would lead to slightly different conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Now let's zoom in at a couple of these particularly low-performing steps. So looking first at the product and service selection step, we see that the convenience store inside the gas station actually plays a major role in shaping the overall experience. So what we see here on this particular pie graph is the different key factors in the low sentiment behind that particular step. So in this case, the product and the service selection. The largest share of the dissatisfaction is about 41%, and that belongs to the retail product offerings, the retail product range, with customers mentioning limited assortment, product availability gaps, and also poorly stocked shelves. We see that another 20% of the negative feedback concerns the fuel quality and fuel type availability. So this highlights the importance of reliable fuel and access to preferred options. After that, we see the food and beverage offerings, resulting in about 15% of the dissatisfied feedback here, along with services such as car washes or air pumps, also influencing how the customers evaluate the station as a quick stop for their needs. So there's definitely additional factors here that could be drilled into with additional CX studies to help define and discover exactly how to improve those particular points.
Yep.
So on this slide, we'll now look at the payment and rewards step. And we can see here that most of the customer dissatisfaction comes from transaction processing failures. So that's about 39% of the negative feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That's really surprising to me, that the payment problems would be that high, because that seems like such an area that would receive a lot of our operational attention. But that's interesting. So these issues occur when they have a problem, when customers have a problem with their payment, and that's back to your point, Alexi, this is for a lot of people, this is their final moment at the end of the visit, and so this is their lasting impression in a lot of cases. So that's an interesting point. And we see another 31% of the negative sentiment here relating to pricing and value transparency, where the customers mention unclear pricing, perceived overcharges, and differences between the displayed price and the final price. We also see additional concerns involving the loyalty programs and the rewards, as well as billing accuracy. And inside of that, there was missing points, incorrect charges, and mentions of discrepancies on the receipts. And less frequently here, we see checkout speed and payment technology also contributing a bit to the frustration that customers experience when systems slow down or fail during their transaction. So let's talk about the key takeaways from what we've seen so far today. Now that we've looked at the journey, there's a few signals that stand out. First of all, the journey shows no clear strengths. The sentiment is dropping early, even during the research stage. This suggests that customers may already feel uncertainty before they've arrived at the store, highlighting the need for clearer communication about fuel options, pricing, and available services. We also see challenges during some core service moments, particularly at the product and service selection stage, where limited assortment or availability gaps can weaken confidence from the consumer. But the largest drop appears at the end of the journey during the payment and rewards and continues into the post-visit communication. Those transaction issues and pricing transparency concerns can disrupt the final moments and reduce the likelihood of repeat visits. And overall, to better understand how these experience drivers influence each stage, we'll now turn to the marketing mix funnel matrix, or what we call the MFM for short, which helps connect what the customers say with when it matters most. Emil will walk us through this and show us how the marketing mix funnel matrix helps us pinpoint exactly where those experiences break down and where focused action can make the biggest impact. Emil?
Thanks, Eric. So what we have seen so far is that the online reviews and ratings actually give us a wealth of information about the customer experience as perceived. But we can actually take it a step deeper and a step further. And this is about taking the marketing mix, taking about the customer journey, and putting these two instruments to work together in what we refer to as the marketing mix funnel matrix. And the funnel here is the customer journey. So what this matrix allows us is to take the data that we already discussed in the context of the marketing mix and in the context of the marketing journey and create a cross-section of those two dimensions. This allows us to see how the journey and the marketing mix intersect, and at this point we can focus with a higher fidelity into the areas that drive the most negative comments. And this is what we see here. What we see on this matrix is a lot of red bars, and the percentages that we see in these red bars represent the proportion of negative aspects identified for each intersection. For example, what we see here with the highest percentage is the intersection of the people and conversion. And this percentage is relative to the total number of negative aspects for the analyzed gas station reviews. And the other conclusion that we can make visually by looking at this table or this matrix is that the top 5 most negative intersections create the vast majority or contribute to the vast majority of all negative experiences. And in this case, these are the intersections mostly in the conversion stage with people, product, place, and process, and in the consideration stage with regards to people. So what we're going to do now is we're going to see how this will help us in creating the most optimal voice of the customer survey. So let me explain the business problem here. With the online reviews and ratings, we get what we get. And in this case, we do an industry study. So we have a lot of online reviews and ratings. But when we take a single brand, we will rarely have that many. And the negative effect of not having enough online reviews and ratings is that the confidence of the conclusions that we derive from the online reviews and ratings decreases. In order to improve and enhance our understanding about the service perceived, we can introduce more measurement methodologies. And one such measurement methodology is the voice of the customer survey. There are solicited and unsolicited surveys, but nonetheless, what we know is that the amount of time or the attention span that will be allotted by the customers is minimal. Therefore, designing the most optimal voice of the customer survey is first very difficult, second very important, with the objective to optimize and maximize rather the extent of useful feedback that we'll receive from the customers. So therefore, what we will do here is we are going to suggest the structure of what we call the starter voice of the customer survey. And the starter voice of the customer survey is, in essence, a 7-question survey with a primary question, a closing question, and within the primary and the closing question, we have 5 what we call key driver questions. And these 5 key driver questions will be derived from the 5 areas that create the most negative experiences in the touch points in intersection with the marketing mix. So going back to the mixed funnel matrix, we'll take the intersections that generate the highest number of negative experiences, and we're going to use those to identify the key drivers in the voice of the customer survey. Why? Because we already know that this is what the customers talk about the most, therefore they care about the most, but also they talk about the most in the most negative way. Therefore, what we want to do is we want to enhance our understanding about the negative drivers. So in this starter voice of the customer survey, we will introduce what we call drill down questions on the key driver questions. And what this is in essence, every time when a key driver question is answered with anything different from very satisfied, so maybe take a step back. The key drivers are designed so that they're responded with a star rating again, ranging from Y to 5 stars. And the 5 star is obviously very satisfied, but any response on the key driver which is different from very satisfied, we will follow up with a drill down on the key driver. So let's see how this works practically. In order to create the voice of the customer survey, we take the 5 most important aspect areas from a standpoint of both number of mentions and negativity of the mentions. And in this specific case, these 5 areas are summarized in the table that you see underneath the mixed funnel matrix. Looking at the column, which is the weakest performing step, these 5 key areas are greetings from the station staff, experience the station ambience, product and service selection, interaction with the staff, and payment and a rewards program. The voice of the customer question for these 5 areas will be shaped as a customer satisfaction question, and you see the questions in the column VOC question. The first one is, how satisfied were you with the greeting and the initial welcome from the station staff? And the other questions are built identically. So taking that as a methodology, the starter voice of the customer survey looks like what you see on this screen. We're starting with a satisfaction question. How satisfied are you with the brand? Then we continue with the 5 key driver questions, which in this case are, how satisfied were you with the greeting from station staff? How satisfied were you with the overall station ambience? And etc., etc. The third and the fourth and the fifth correspond to the areas from the mixed funnel matrix that we discussed earlier. And then the drill down questions are also derived utilizing the same methodology, but just taking it a step further. So in this specific example, looking at the greeting from the how satisfied were you with the greeting from the station staff, the drill down follow-up questions are, no greeting on arrival, staff seemed indifferent, the staff was rude or unfriendly, the staff tone was rude or unfriendly, no offer of assistance was offered, and I was ignored at the entrance. So these 5 drill down questions are again derived from the online reviews and ratings, what the customers talk about the most in the most negative way. With this, we now have a starter voice of the customer survey, which is both short, concise, and addresses the most important touch points that we have already identified from the online reviews and ratings. We can take that survey and get that in field with the objective to collect more information and to drill down into the areas where the customer experience is the most negative, and at the same time where the customer experience creates the highest number of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
With that, the brands can decide how much they can and they want to invest to enhance their understanding about the service as perceived by the customers, and therefore the online reviews and ratings and the voice of the customer surveys represent a very optimal way to understand that specific part of the customer experience, the service as perceived by customers.
I think this is a fantastic approach, very powerful. I was thinking as you spoke, Emil, how hugely that improves the quality of the data if we let the survey, voice of customer survey design being guided by a priori prior findings from the social media, and knowing the gaps in customer experience and knowing the dissatisfaction sources, because this is the basics of market research. Long surveys, they make the data worse. They ruin the data quality because the drop-off rate increases with the length of the survey. So people just don't finish the survey, or they get tired and they start not to tell the truth. Let's not say they lie, but they just make less effort to remember, just make them sometimes random. And so if we manage to keep it survey short, but actually make it first on a regular basis and then act on it, it's much better than making huge random studies and then the academic sort, which would not give us the true picture actually, because when they are huge questionnaires, you need to really incentivize the customers, and it still will the data quality will still go down. So I like this approach very much, and I would suggest anyone to employ it.
Thank you.
For service, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that was indeed the objective. We know that capturing the online reviews and ratings and analyzing those now with AI is perhaps the most inexpensive methodology, but this only gets you as far as the number of online reviews and ratings that you get, and you have no way to control that number. You get what you get, and normally you don't get a lot. But again, this is a very good first broad view of the picture, which gives us the ability to design these voice of the customer surveys in a way that they're surgically precise, minimalistic, yet pointing to the areas that.
One more thing I wanted to add here to comment on Emma is that this metric would definitely deserve the central space on a proper customer experience dashboard in a gas retail company, or if you apply the principle to other industries as well. So now that the CX dashboard topic is so important these days, that the companies are progressing and getting more matured and managing their customer experience, they want to understand how to build their customer experience dashboard. Well, one answer is to put those metrics that matter. Not just everything it's nice to know or nice to have, but those that really drive actually, I would say, the company performance, the return on the shares would be, but that's only ultimately, but then the customer behavior, customer perception, loyalty, let's say attachment and behavior. So this is one absolutely to be there among others.
That is one of the beauties of the marketing mixed funnel matrix, is it helps you really distill down into what's the top items that really drive not only the customer experience, but where's the return on investment in trying to improve things.
Yeah, not more data, but data that is relevant.
And what we see is that the top 5 usually take more than, in this case, more than 20 plus 30, 60, 70. In this case, the top 5 intersections between the mix and the journey take up more than 75% of all the conversations, which is significant in number, yet very focused with regards to identification.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You could focus a VOC survey on those particular elements to drill down, and then from there focus a mystery shopping program to objectively measure and couple that with some training and so forth, and have a very targeted program that has huge impact.
So that is the service perceived. Do we want to move to the service designed topics for the service as designed?
Well, this is the end of part 2 of our 3-part episode here on the Synergistic CX Podcast, where we're focusing on the gas station industry. In the next segment, we'll have a more in-depth discussion with our special guest, Alexei Cesar, founder and CEO of 4Service Group, regarding the customer experience in this industry and his additional insights on CX expertise. Remember that you can download the details of today's industry study for free on our website, cx-channel.com. And you can also follow the CX channel on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your other favorite social media to stay on top of our monthly podcasts each and every month. Be sure to press the subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode.